Very good, Joe. Thank you.
Anytime.
Hello, Joe. Oh,
Hello. I'm not gonna stay on for the full meeting. I just wanted to make sure it got started. Sorry.
oh, okay.
Okay.
That's good.
5:29:57, Melody.
Okay, so I guess we should get started then. Okay. Aloha mau. Excuse me, try that again. Aloha mai kauko and mahalo for joining us. My name is Melody Aduha, newly elected Democratic National Convention delegate. I serve as Region 9 Chair of the Oahu County Democrats. Region 9 includes districts 48 through 51, from Waihole to Waimanalo. Flora Obayashi is a vice president for House District 48, Precinct 1, and former Kahalu'u Neighborhood Board Chair for 8 years. She will also be helping in moderating this evening. Also assisting us is Oahu County Democrats Chair Emeritus Rich Halverson, who is our host and timekeeper. Tonight we will hear from District 50 candidates representing Kailua to Kaneohe Bay. They are Patrick Bronco and Micah Pritchitzer, two outstanding Democrats vying for the seat currently held by Representative Cynthia Thielen, who served for an illustrious 30 years in the State House. We owe her much gratitude for her life work as a public servant for a job well done. Each candidate will have 4 minutes to give their opening statements, which includes their top 3 legislative priorities. Then they will answer 15 questions within 2 minutes each. Then each candidate will have 3 minutes for their closing statements. We will end with some information on the April 8th primary election by mail-in ballot. So, without further ado, let's get started. Flora, I'll turn it to you.
August 8th, right? August 8th. Okay.
I'm sorry, you're August 8th. Thank you.
Okay. Let's, by coin toss, let us hear the opening statement from our candidate, Mr. Patrick Branco.
Thank you, Flora, and good evening to everyone who's joining us. I really appreciate the opportunity to share a little bit more, especially during this time of COVID-19, when it makes it a little bit more difficult for us first-time candidates to be out there campaigning. A little bit about myself. My name is Patrick Pihana Branco. I'm a 4th-generation Kailua resident. I had the great opportunity at studying at the Kamehameha schools, and I received a full scholarship to Hawaii Pacific University, where I studied international relations and political science, where I also served as student body president. In 2012, I was very fortunate to receive a Congressman Rango International Affairs Fellowship. This fellowship recruited students across the country that trained us to become young diplomats. So my education was fully funded at Johns Hopkins University in international economics. And after that, I joined the U.S. Foreign Service, where I served as a U.S. diplomat for 7 years. I had the great honor of serving our country in Colombia, Pakistan, Afghanistan, Venezuela, as well with the Secretary of State team at the Department of State. That's really the background that I bring to the table. My story, why I'm running, is recently after I came back home, I had a teacher that said, who knew my story. I'm the son of a teenage mom and a father who didn't finish high school. And he told me, you know what, statistically, you're not supposed to be a former US diplomat. And that really stuck with me. That's something that I really thought about. And it's made me think about why. And when I reflect back on my life, there were several factors. One, I had a great education. That's something my parents really focused on and really promoted in our ohana. Number 2, I also had a grandma that had a really good aim with a rubber slipper. So anytime that I ran away, she got me really good. And lastly, my parents had very good union jobs. My mother is a union steward for the nurses union, and my father is a member of UPW. And that was during a time where if you worked hard, you could make it in Hawaii. And that is definitely not the case now. And that's really why I'm running. My cousins who recently graduated from Kalaheo High School, when I was talking to them about future career plans, they told me, you know, I don't know if I should stay home or should I go to the continent. for better opportunities. And that made me sad. As you know, I went away, I traveled all, around the world, but when I was growing up, that wasn't a factor for me. I always thought that I could get a good job and I could remain in Hawaii. And I really do believe that as your state legislature, I could achieve that through my 3 policy areas, which is economy, education, and environment. Number 1 is the environment. If we don't protect our environment, we don't have an economy and we can't educate our students. So that's why it's so important to protect our environment. If I'm elected, I will promote policies such as our state needs to lead by example. I would introduce a bill asking requiring our state to ban all single-use plastic and make the way and lead our state in that movement. As well as the economy. Our economy is not diversified and our economy is collapsing under COVID-19. We need to look at ways to diversify our economy, but as well as make it easier for our citizens to remain here and thrive. Such policies such as getting rid of the over-the-counter excise tax on groceries, a basket of goods, as well as medication is a policy. Even though it's a small relief, it's a relief to our working class families. And lastly, on education, our teachers are poorly underpaid. Our education ranks the lowest in the nation, and we need to do everything to make sure our students thrive in a global economy and are prepared to get good jobs in the economy we create in Hawaii. Mahalo for the opportunity.
Mahalo, Patrick. Mr. Prickett, sir.
Aloha, thank you for having me here tonight, and thank you, Flora, Melody, and Rich for putting this on in the Democratic Party of Hawaii. My name is Micah Pregitzer. I am a resident of Kailua here. I grew up in the area. I've been teaching at Kalaheo High School for the last 16 years, and I'm living here with my wife and 2 daughters who attend Kainalu Elementary. I grew up in the area, and over the years, seeing our friends and family have to move away because they could no longer afford to live here has been hard. I know everyone that lives here knows people who's had that happen to them. And it's not fair to the residents and the people who call this place home that they can no longer afford here because corporations are making a profit, and their profit is more important than the lives of our residents. So that's one of the reasons I'm running. Also, as a longtime educator here, funding for education has been overlooked for decades now.
We lost audio.
Sorry,
Okay.
I got muted there. Did you hear me from the beginning, or did I get muted the whole time?
No, we heard you in the beginning, and then all of a sudden you went silent.
Or so, yeah. Okay, great. So as a longtime educator, funding education adequately here in Hawaii is something that's one of my top priorities, as well as affordability and protecting our environment for future generations. Our education system here is not one of the worst in the United States, but it is one of the most underfunded education systems in the United States. So if I'm elected, that's one of my top priorities. I want to work on finding an adequate funding source. As I said, there's been years that bills have been put forward to the legislature to fund education and to address the problems, but year after year, the legislature has failed to pass those initiatives and to address the problem. Protecting our environment is another of my big concerns. Taking advantage of our abundant sources of reusable, renewable energy, increasing our battery storage capacity for all of our renewable energy so we can fully take advantage of it and we're not reliant on fossil fuels anymore. Manage retreat from our shorelines in our flood areas so that people aren't losing their homes to sea level rise. And then, as I mentioned before, affordability is my other top priority. We need to build more affordable housing for our residents so they're not forced to move out of the state and find other places to live that are less expensive. increasing our minimum wage so that people who are working here don't have to work 3 or 4 jobs so that they can afford to pay rent on a studio or a tiny little 1-bedroom apartment for their families. These are the things that if I'm elected, I plan on working on, and hopefully we'll be able to pass and improve our town and our community overall. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, mahalo, Mr. Prigitzer. The first question goes to you. It appears that both of you do not have prior legislative experience. What leadership experiences have you had that relates to the role of a state legislator?
Thank you.
Mr. Prigitzer.
As a teacher here, I have been heavily involved with the Hawaii State Teachers Association, the teachers union, both as a school level leader at Kalaheo High School, as well as in different capacities in HSTA. I've been on the negotiations committee for HSTA. I've been on the board of directors for HSTA, and I currently am the Windward chapter president for HSTA. So all of those experiences, especially being a board member and president of the Windward chapter, I feel have given me ample experience learning how to work with people, to collaborate and come to agreements that benefit everyone overall. I'm open-minded and willing to compromise if it's necessary in order to reach our goal in the long run. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Branco. Patrick. He's muted. We have to unmute Patrick.
There we go. I apologize. Yeah. I have not served in the state legislature as an elected official, but I think what I bring in terms of leadership experience is my various backgrounds. I had the great pleasure of, while in university, I worked for LG Electronics in Seoul in legal foreign affairs. So that brings some private sector experience. I also worked as in the state legislature as a legislative aide. So I do understand that form of government. As currently now, I'm a planner at the city and county. So I understand city and county affairs, as well as my longest career opportunity, which was 7 years in the State Department, traveling abroad, negotiating, building coalitions, and working abroad on the highest level of our nation and advancing U.S. policy goals. As far as my history and leadership as well, I served as student body president at Hawaii Pacific University, which I was able to achieve a spot on the actual school board for our student leader. Also, as well as one of the leadership traits that I'll bring to the job is crisis management. In 2019, I was part of the team in U.S. Embassy Caracas that was evacuated out. And having a diverse team in Caracas, as well as knowing that I'm going to have to leave the country, I was able to, make sure my team was safe, make sure my team was secure in Venezuela, but then also leaving and going through that and managing a departure out of Colombia. Also for me, I think one thing about being a leader is being inquisitive and being able to listen. I'm not the type of person that's just going to make policy because I read a report or I'm going to read a book. I'm the type of guy that actually gets there and gets out. So for example, as terms of houseless policy, I realized that I don't know many that actually who are houseless. So I decided to volunteer here at St. Anthony's in Kailua, so every Tuesday, so I could understand and speak to those who are houseless, to understand from them, understand their issues. If I'm going to be the one making the policy, I need to know. Lastly, I'm the type of guy that if there is an issue, we're going to get going and we're going to get to work. For example, when COVID-19 hit, my family and I recognized that there was going to be a need for our kupuna. So quickly we were able to get it out there, and we made over 350 kupuna kits, and we delivered it throughout our community as well. Also, that after we saw that need was fulfilled, we realized that the community needed masks as well. So as of today, I don't know how to sew, but I've become very proficient at cutting material. and my grandmother's souls, and we were able to distribute almost 3,000 masks throughout the community as well. And I believe those are the leadership skills that I would bring to the job. Ability to react when it's a crisis, and ability to roll my sleeves up and get to work. Mahalo.
Okay.
Mahalo.
Thank you.
Oh,
Thank
that's yours.
Yes. Thank you very much, Patrick, and thank you very much, Micah. Okay, so let's move on to the second question. This question pertains to being a team player. The job of a state representative requires a skill set that includes collaboration and compromise. What experiences have you had that demonstrate your ability to work with others productively and effectively? I believe it is back to you, Patrick.
Thank you. Actually, as a U.S. diplomat, basically your job description is working productively and effectively with others. It's your job to build coalitions. It's your job to build cross-cultural connections, and it's your job to actually work through language barriers. And so I did that as a U.S. diplomat for 7 years. Also, I could share that it's not easy. It's not easy. I have one story, for example, when we were trying to set up a bilateral trade talk between Secretary Kerry as well as President Santos of Colombia. President Santos wanted 5 minutes, Secretary Kerry wanted 10 minutes. And knowing how to go back and forth is actually key to maintain your relationship with, your biggest boss, the Secretary of State, as well as making sure you don't ruin your relationship with your Colombian interlocutors. That is something that's very key. And so that's something I worked on while as a U.S. diplomat. And I do believe that I'll be able to bring that as a state legislature, be able to cross party lines, cross different factions, and build a coalition. Because one thing I know is in the state legislature, everyone has a love of Hawaii. Everyone may be different. Everyone may come from different communities. We all come from different islands as well. But that's one thing that's going to bind us together. And that's one thing I'll work on to make sure that we build a brighter, better future for all of Hawaii. Mahalo.
Okay, thank you very much, Patrick. And at this time, I'd like to hear from Micah. Same question.
Okay. So as a teacher, I've spent 16 years collaborating with both teachers, parents, and students. In addition to that, I mentioned that I'm on the board of directors for HSTA. And being on the board of directors is like being on a small legislature. It's made up of a number of different people, and we don't always have the same opinions and viewpoints. So we have to work together to come to an agreement and a compromise sometimes on what we're going to do. So I feel it's very similar to the legislature, where not everyone is coming from the same area and the same background and the same priorities, but you do need to still work together with them and form relationships with them in order to get the job done at the end of the day. That being said, I'm not willing to sell out my values or my community in order to just get along better with the others in the legislature. I'm not afraid to stand up if I feel something is wrong and isn't right, and I won't just go along in order to be copacetic with everything else. So thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. Question number 3 has to do with the economic impacts of COVID-19. State officials took actions to flatten the curve on pandemic deaths by restricting tourism, shutting down schools and businesses, restricting large gatherings, which has compromised the state's economic health. In May, the legislature added $1.3 billion to the Rainy Day Fund. As a state legislator, how would you allocate the funds to rescue the economy? And I believe this is Micah Prigitzer's turn.
Yes, thank you. So first of all, I do not agree with the legislature banking the $1.3 billion and putting it in the Rainy Day Fund. It's raining right now. In fact, it's pouring right now. And that money needs to be used to help the communities and help the individuals who are hurting the most right now. Saving it for later on is not going to help our economy, and it's also going to lengthen how long it's going to take our economy to recover from this crisis. We need to fix and update our unemployment system. It's been abundantly clear that That is not something that is working. There is still today people who have not received their unemployment checks from the beginning of this whole thing in March. I talked to one of my former students a week ago, and she still hadn't heard anything and is having trouble getting through. The software and the hardware that they're using is some of it is from the 1980s. And so that really needs to be updated and taken care of so that we can help our citizens and our residents get the money that they need. Also, the CARES Act, we need to use it. We need to put it in our hands of our communities. Hawaii has one of the highest credit ratings in the US for a state, and that's great. But if we're not going to take advantage of that, there's up to $2 billion that we could take out low interest loans on to help our communities and our hardest hit individuals. And that's something else that we need to do. And then finally, the governor should suspend rent and mortgage payments. That's something he should have done before, and that's something he could still do today. Those are the individuals that are having trouble paying their bills. They're worrying about paying their rent, and that's not something they should have to worry about right now. There's no reason that people should be having to pay those bills right now. And with this money and with the governor's power, he could take care of that, and that would be a huge help to our residents and our small businesses.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Prigitzer. Patrick Banko, your turn.
Sure. I also don't agree how the state legislature put that money into the rainy day fund. I do understand, though, why they did it. We've had a failure of leadership from Governor Ige, so it was very important that we took that money and we put it into the hands of the legislature. What I don't agree in is that they took a 3-week recess to get this done. Our community needs the money. As we saw with these mass food drives that are happening across Oahu, there is up to 4,000 people who come every day for food. And those are the types of programs that we need to be funding. So for me, in terms of the $1.3 billion, I look at it as an immediate, medium, and long-term solutions. The first, we need to help our working families. We need to make sure those are hardest hit are getting the money. We need to make sure, for example, that for working class families, many of them don't have access to normal capital right now. And so I believe that the state should offer at cost, low interest loans to families, as well as grants, to make sure that our community is not borrowing money from payday loans or from loan sharks, and to make sure that we don't continue this cycle of debt. Additionally, we need to fund mass food drives across the state. We have done this successfully here on Oahu. We haven't done this across the state. Recently, I've seen the figures that we were able to distribute over 1 million pounds of food at $1.2 million. And that was 16 food drives. That's an amazing low cost, and that we need to be implementing that across the state to make sure those who are most food insecure are getting food immediately. As terms of medium term, we need to make sure that our small businesses who are struggling are getting PPE, and we need to make sure so they can open up and help get Hawaii's economy back to work. Also, we need to use that money to reboot tourism quickly. That is an industry we know is not the perfect solution, but it's an industry that we need to help reboot to get people back to work. Also, that's an opportunity for us to change
Mahalo.
how we view tourism. Thank you.
Mahalo, Patrick. Now, let's have you answer question number 4 on the social impacts of COVID-19. Other states reopened earlier and are now experiencing spikes in infection rates and rapidly rising pandemic deaths. Although Hawaii pandemic infections and deaths are relatively lower, there is a 25% unemployment rate and those long lines at the food bank distribution points. As Hawaii begins to reopen for business and workers return to their jobs, do you think the government is doing all it can to keep the people safe? I believe it's your turn, yeah, Patrick?
Our government needs to do more. Our government has been failing. For example, we need clear communication. One thing I've learned through crisis management is we need clear communication when it comes to a crisis. We have seen different tracks of communication from all levels, and we need clear communication coming from the highest levels of government. The other thing we need to do is there's a lack of PPE for our small businesses. We need to make sure our small businesses are getting PPE as well as our citizens are getting PPE. And our government should be doing greater steps to take care of that. Lastly, we need to hire more contact providers. It's recommended for every 100,000 contact providers, we need to have one. And right now we don't have enough contact providers, and we need to make sure we have that to make sure our government is responding and tracing to stop the spread of COVID. The other thing we need to also implement is testing for visitors prior to entry if they do come here. I'm not saying that visitors should be coming here. I'm actually saying they shouldn't, but if they are coming, we need to make our visitors are tested prior to entry. Also, we need to reinforce social distancing measures. And last of all, we need to make sure our government leaders are transparent. It's very important that we as the people, we as the citizens, those who vote them in, understand their plans, understand where they're taking us, and that has not been clearly communicated. We need to make sure we know, and that as us, as voters, to make sure that we are educated and we are abreast of what the situation is happening, whether it's how to stop COVID-19, reopening our economy, or making sure that working class families are getting the needed supplies they need. Mahalo.
Mahalo, Patrick. Micah Prigitzer, your turn.
Thank you. I do not feel that our government has done all that they can to help our residents here. As I said before, and it's been mentioned before, $1.3 billion has been placed in the rainy day fund, and that is money that could be used right now to help our most needy individuals. The Working Families Coalition proposes that we should spend over $350 million of the remaining CARES Act relief fund to support our families through the following priorities: healthcare, social services, basic needs, and assistance for immigrants. So that's money that the legislature should be spending right now in order to help our citizens. Being in the middle Pacific Ocean, we are unique from the rest of the United States, and that's something that we need to take advantage of. I think it is important that we open our economy here. We've started doing that so that we can get our small businesses working and our people making money and investing back into their communities. But we also need to make sure that we protect everyone here from individuals that are coming in from the mainland and from other countries. I don't think the government has done a very good job of enforcing the 14-day quarantine here in Hawaii. Calling people after they've landed here to check on them doesn't really make sure that they're actually staying in their rooms for 14 days or their homes for 14 days. And so that's something that the state needs to take seriously and actually enforce. There's been a number of infractions and citations that have occurred, but for the most part, you can go to the beaches here in Kailua and there's a lot of people that are down there that are not from Hawaii. So I think that's something that the state should focus on in order to protect all the residents here more. Thank you.
Melody, please take number 5 and 6. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. I'm
Good.
gonna, yeah, that's fine. I'm actually gonna take the next one and we can alternate as per. Okay.
Sorry, I messed up.
No problem. Not at all. Okay. Thank you very much, Micah, and thank you very much, Patrick. And so the 5th question now is dealing with economic diversification. Right? Hawaii has been highly dependent on tourism for its economic well-being for decades. What type of economic diversification or alternate industries might you promote for a more resilient economy? I believe this is for Patrick. Oh, excuse me, this is for Micah.
Thank you. Yeah.
My apologies.
Well,
All good.
is it? I think it's Micah.
Yes,
Yeah.
it is.
Yes.
Yeah.
It is. So I think one of the bright spots of this pandemic is it has shined a light on how badly we need to diversify our economy. We put all of our eggs into the tourism basket, and now we've seen firsthand what happens when something occurs that really hits our tourism industry hard. Tourism is great. It provides a ton of jobs. for all the people here in the state, for a lot of people here in the state. But we need to diversify and branch out into other areas. One of the areas that I highly recommend looking at is sustainable agriculture here in Hawaii. That is something that will not only provide jobs and diversify our economy, but will also reduce our dependence on food from outside sources and reduce our carbon footprint here, so we're not having food shipped in across the Pacific. So I think that's something that we really need to do. The other thing is renewable energy sources. It's so important that we invest in those jobs here in Hawaii. We have an abundance of renewable energy sources here, whether it's solar or geothermal or wind, but we need to invest into those. We need to produce jobs for those and make sure that individuals from other industries like tourism and fossil fuel industries are provided those jobs, so that they're not going to be unemployed just because that part of the market is shrinking. So those are two things, if elected, that I plan on focusing on first to diversify the economy. And I think they will benefit our state overall greatly. Thanks.
Great, thank you very much. And now Patrick Bronco.
As everyone knows, we need to diversify our economy. I believe there's several policies that we can pursue. For example, one would be agriculture. We need to legalize industrial hemp. That's a $22 billion market. That's something Cynthia Phelan fought for, and I think that's another policy that I think should happen. Also, we can use tax subsidies and credits to incentivize the creation of agriculture co-ops and companies that can produce new and innovative products that Hawaii can export. In West Africa, due to climate change, cacao farms are actually are not able to produce cacao. We are the only state in the union that can produce cacao, and I think this is an emerging market. I also think that even though I'm saying that we need to produce more agriculture, we need to make sure we're doing it in a sustainable way. Make sure it's carbon neutral, that make sure that when we're planting, we're using agroforestry models. And I think that's a really great opportunity for us. The other opportunity is we have a unique location. We are the only state that's able to produce many of the only forms of renewable energy: wave, solar, geothermal, hydrogen, and biofuels. This is an opportunity. When I look back at our ancestors, 1887, King Kalakaua electrified Iolani Palace. We were at the forefront of energy production, right? Let's make Hawaii at the forefront of energy production again. And we can do this by creating a market, by inviting companies from outside to come in, but also learning and making sure we're exporting that technology out to the world. Another thing we can do as well is invest in infrastructure spending, such as Aloha Stadium needs to be renewed. Here in Kailua, we need sewer infrastructure improved, and also modernization of our schools across the state. Many of our facilities are not at par, and we need to make sure that we're making sure our students have a great learning environment.
Great,
Mahalo, Patrick and Micah. Melody, you want me to do 6?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
The next question is on homelessness. Do you have any strategies to propose about addressing homelessness in Hawaii? And I believe the question goes to Patrick first.
Sure, absolutely. I believe there's 4 policies that we can pursue to address homelessness in Hawaii. Lieutenant Governor Josh Green has been promoting the Kauhale model, and we found that when individuals, which is housing first, so through this model, we find that when individuals are housed first, there's more positive outcomes. Then we can do wraparound services. So through the Kauhale model, we can promote housing first. This increase drastically decreases impacts on our society, and we're able to help those who are houseless by getting the proper medication, getting wraparound services, and social care. Secondly, we need to hire more qualified social workers. That's something that our state doesn't do well, and we need to hire more social workers to make sure those who are houseless can actually get the services they need. The third is there's a pilot program called the Law Enforcement Assisted Diversion Program that actually was developed at Yale Law School. So when police go out and they do their sweeps, what they do, this program is they, instead of offering a ticket to those who are houseless, they actually provide them with the opportunity to go and see a social worker. And this has actually had great success. This program has actually only has $250,000. And I believe this would be a great program that we need to fully fund, because this is a great alternative than our houseless community getting tickets. Lastly, another one would be doctors be able to prescribe Medicaid for rent. A lot of those who are houseless actually go to the emergency room and actually cost Medicaid between $150 to $3,000 a night. And I believe this is a possibility for us here. And this is a study that was researched into 2017 that showed this could drastically reduce the cost of Medicaid from the state, as well as promote our houseless population to get into a sustainable livelihood and help them transition out of houselessness.
Mahalo, Patrick. Micah, your turn.
Thank you. So the number one thing for me for homelessness and houselessness is providing truly affordable housing for our residents. I'm extremely worried after this crisis and so many people out of work and unemployed that our homelessness rate is just going to skyrocket. And in Kailua, everyone who lives in Kailua is more than aware that there is almost no affordable housing. And we've seen year after year, our friends and family have to move away because there's nowhere that they can afford to live anymore. And that's not fair. So truly affordable housing isn't just something that's labeled affordable housing. I know in the past, developers here in Kailua and around the state have labeled things as affordable, but providing a home, a small family home for $800,000 is not affordable for most people here. It needs to be provided for individuals who are making 60% or less of the area median income, so the average. We also need to be investing in the Housing First program and rapid relocation rehousing initiatives to prevent new individuals from becoming homeless, especially, like I said, with the crisis now. There's going to be a lot of people that are going to be at risk of being houseless in the near future. And these rapid rehousing initiatives will prevent a lot of that from happening. So before they're actually living on the streets, they are placed in a home temporarily or short term until they can get back on their feet and working again and making money, so that they don't become part of our homeless population. Something we're not taking advantage of or not implementing here is the Ohana zones. There's $15 million a year that's provided for that, and it's something that needs to be made permanent.
Micah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Micah and Patrick. Melody?
Okay, thank you very much, Patrick. I mean, Micah, my apologies.
All good, all good.
Okay, question number 7. This one is multiple parts to it, but let's go ahead because they all interrelate. It deals with climate change and renewable energy. Given rising sea levels and more frequent extreme weather, what sort of mitigation measures must be implemented to protect and preserve our Ko'olaupoko coastal communities? And what would you do to help Hawaii adapt to the adverse effects of climate change? And what would you do to meet the 100% renewable energy mandate of 2045? Micah, this is for you.
Thank you. So first of all, that date needs to be moved up. Researchers have shared that if we don't stop climate change by 2030, it's going to be irreversible. So we need to work a lot harder and move that date up and become self-reliant and not reliant on fossil fuels anymore by 2030. One of the ways we can do that in Hawaii, and there's a number of things we can do, but one of the big things that I'd like to push for is increasing our battery storage capacity for our renewable energy sources. So places like the Leeward Coast that produce a ton of solar energy aren't letting that go to waste and taking full advantage of it, so that we don't have to rely on fossil fuels in those times when the solar energy isn't available. That would be huge and would definitely move up our date a lot. I think we can also charge green fees like countries like New Zealand are doing for visitors. If visitors are coming here to take advantage of our beautiful environments and natural resources, no reason that they can't pay a little bit extra to help take care of them. A carbon tax is also something that I support. Just in the first year alone, we could produce $365 million taxing the biggest users of fossil fuels in the state. As I mentioned before, we need to expand our green job growth, especially from the tourism industry and fossil fuel industry. Providing jobs for those individuals in the renewable energy sector would be a huge help to the economy and to our environment. As a longtime resident of Kailua here, I am opposed to building any new seawall structures. Those don't do anything to mitigate the damage that it does to the shorelines. It just passes it on down the road to the next area where there isn't a seawall built. And then finally, we need to take a good hard look at a managed retreat from our shorelines. There should be no new buildings in the flood zones so that as the sea level does rise, new homes aren't going to be damaged and destroyed as the ocean starts to take it back. Mahalo.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Micah. At this time, let's hear from Patrick. Same question.
As a Kanaka, Aina and our environment is essential to who we are as a Native people. I believe there's many great policies and many great paths. For me, there's three, how I look at energy, renewable energy, there's three areas that I look at. First is in the field of agriculture. We need to promote policies that help farmers and those who are growing crops across the state to practice regenerative agriculture to make sure that carbon is not in the soil. That's something that we really need to look into. Right now, we do a lot of monocrops, or we're not actually farming in the right way. And this is one way that we need to increase our food supply, but also protect our environment. There's also companies like FarmLink, which is a local company that is actually helping local farmers get connected with, basically they serve as a distributor to make sure our local families are getting fresh fruits and vegetables. They're looking at expanding outward. This is a company that we need to invest in. Actually, when ships actually leave Honolulu Harbor to the outer island, they actually leave full, and when they come back, they leave less than half full. This is an opportunity for us to fill our ships, to fill our transportation, and also feed our people. Secondly, in mobility. Mobility and transportation is a lot of carbon emitters. We need to collect that data to understand transportation sequences, how we transport ourselves, and get effective policies to mitigate that. So I'm proposing the office chief data position in the executive branch that I would actually analyze all the data from all the various departments at all the various levels to help us analyze and understand how we can change our transportation patterns to be the least amount of polluters. Also, for rental cars, if you want to enjoy beautiful Hawaii, you're going to have to drive an EV vehicle. I think that's something we need to produce, and we also need to back that up to make sure our infrastructure is ready for electric vehicles. It's not right if we're producing electricity with coal, but we're making our tourists drive EV vehicles. So we need to also change our infrastructure. Lastly is energy. We need to do a lot more on energy, and I'll finish there. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Patrick. Flora?
Okay, next question. And we begin with Patrick. The question relates to livable wage. The current minimum wage is $10.10 an hour. What do you consider to be a livable wage and why? And what would you propose to relieve the high cost of living in Hawaii?
Absolutely. So just as we have a goal of 2030 to double our food production, 2045 to be 100% renewable, I think we need to set a goal to increase our minimum wage. Our living wage should be over $18.75. But in reality, we need a more layered approach. With our current economic situation, I do not believe that is possible. I believe right now in the state legislature, we need to, if I'm elected, I would introduce legislation for a $15.75 minimum wage. 2 sessions ago, they introduced $15.75, it didn't pass. This session, $13.75 didn't pass, or it's still being talked about. We need to make sure we set a goal and make sure that we increase to make sure working class families can receive a proper wage. The reason why I'm asking for a more layered approach, right now, many small businesses are the brink of closing. From the Hawaii Chamber of Commerce, they say 1 in 4 small businesses are going to close. KITV4 today actually reported 85% of individual restaurants are actually going to close. So we need to make sure that we understand the economic impacts. An increase to the minimum wage would actually hit our small businesses right now, but we need to make sure that we have a goal and we're keeping to that goal. So that's why I propose that we do a 1575 and we do a layered approach. First, small businesses open, and then our larger businesses, I would ask them to call back our workers, and then we need to go ahead and push for a higher minimum wage. And then also additionally, we need to follow up that with policies to lower the cost of living. We also need to increase affordable housing. We need to diversify our economy, and we need to make sure that we need quality education so our students can get better jobs. Mahalo.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Patrick. It's Micah's turn, right?
Yes, thank you. So according to DBET and other financial institutions, in Hawaii, someone would have to make $17 an hour at least in order to afford to live here. So if elected, I will propose $17 an hour minimum wage. It's not fair if you're working a full-time job that you have to go out and get multiple jobs just in order to survive here and remain here as a resident. Also, there should be no tip credit. Tip credit's a horrible title for it. It should be tip theft, okay? Because we should be paying our restaurant workers at least the minimum wage as well. And the reason that I support raising the minimum wage is because when we uplift working families and our working class, it uplifts the local economy. Because the individuals, if they're making more money and they can spend it on food and on necessities that they need, that money goes back into our community, into our local small businesses. So it's important that we are paying our workers a living wage so that they can afford to live here, and so that that money will go back into our community, which overall will increase revenues. So I'm a big supporter of at least $17 an hour for our minimum wage. And also it should be tied to inflation. So as inflation increases, the minimum wage should also increase. Not these tiny little incremental increases as inflation skyrockets and makes them insignificant. Mahalo.
Thank you, Micah and Patrick. Melody?
Yeah, thank you very much. All right, so this question goes to foreign investments. Given the coronavirus and the shortfall in the state's budget as a result, what would you do, if anything, to curb foreign investments in real estate speculation in Hawaii? This question goes now to Micah.
Thank you. So I would like to reintroduce the constitutional amendment from the last election cycle or last legislative session. Those who aren't familiar with it, the Hawaii State Teachers Association introduced the constitutional amendment to charge a surcharge on investment properties, and that additional income would be used to support and fund adequately our public education system. And I would introduce it with the original language. The issue with it, the reason it was overturned is as it went through the legislature, some of the legislators watered down the language, so it was a little unclear exactly what the intent of the bill was. And so I would introduce it, and I would fight to make sure that that language stays specific and strong so that there is no ambiguity and it's clear what exactly is going to be in tax investment properties and where that money is going to be going to public education. The investment or speculation, real estate speculation, is one of the main reasons that our real estate market is out of reach for normal residents here. And so this is one way that we could help bring that back into check. If you're charging more taxes, which Hawaii, by the way, has the lowest property taxes in the nation. And so that will discourage foreign investors from bringing their money here just to buy up properties so that they can have it sit there and accrue interest and make more money for them, as opposed to residents affording and buying those properties. Mahalo.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Micah. At this time, I'd like to pose the same question to Patrick.
So actually, foreign investments make up 4% of the real estate market here in Hawaii, which is actually a very small percentage. The big market is actually 24% of the houses that actually were purchased last year. So about 5,000 were sold. 1,000 of them were from the continent. We need to get to the root issue, is increasing the supply to reduce prices. We need to adopt very aggressive, affordable housing policies and options, and we need to make sure that there's no outside competition. And so as far as those who are purchasing real estate from outside, those taxes should be increased. We need to make sure that there is a huge financial we need to make sure there's a huge financial disadvantage for those who are just going to be buying homes here and not fully living in it. And that's why I propose actually a tax on vacation rental properties over $1 million that remain empty for most of the year. That's something we definitely need to look at. As far as foreign investment, I think there is an opportunity here, or those who are from the continent. We could use those who want to buy and put them to specific zones in areas that we want to be developed. Like, for example, I worked in downtown Honolulu. By 6 p.m., it's quiet. No one lives there. We need to promote more high density housing. And in these types of zones, I think these are opportunities where this type of purchase could occur. But we need to make sure that we're solving the biggest issue, which is affordable housing. I can't tell you enough that we need to make sure that we are looking across the state on ways to develop affordable housing for those in Hawaii. Like myself, I was very fortunate that I was able to move back home and live with my grandma, but I need to recognize and check my privilege, that I understand that not everyone has that opportunity. And we need to make sure those who want to move home or those who want to stay in Hawaii have good, affordable options to remain in Hawaii. Mahalo.
Thank you very much, Patrick. Flora?
The next question is on public education. Given the shortages in the state budget and the coronavirus impacts, what is your position on increased funding for public education? How would you fund it, and by how much of an increase? This question, I believe, goes to Patrick.
Mm-hmm. Yes, we need to fully fund education. I honestly, education is the great equalizer. I've seen that all across the world. I implemented several education programs in Venezuela, in Pakistan, in Colombia. And this is the factor that made sure that those, like, for example, in Pakistan, young girls who were never able to, that were always had to be in a house, were able to get educated and were able to get economic mobilization. So we need to fully fund our education system. How I would view it is that we need to look at what type of jobs we want our students to get. What type of livelihood do we want them to get? And that's where we go from. And so as for students, I would propose working with teachers like Micah, who's worked in our public school education system for 16 years, to look at ways we can improve our curriculum. We need to make sure that we're not teaching single curriculum classes, but making sure those classes and curriculum is being intermingled. Mathematics combined with real life solutions, physics combined with communications. We need to work and to make sure that our students are able to compete in a global environment. Also, one of my big I testified at the state capitol was universal pre-K. I really do believe this is a long-term investment that we need to do. This is something that when we get our students young, we prepare them for long-term success. As far as teachers, we need to make sure our teachers are getting paid what they deserve. I hope our teachers are worrying about their lesson plans and not paying their utility bills. I would also like to propose a teacher pipeline program. So students who want to be teachers from local high schools will get funded their college education and become teachers after that with a commitment to the DOE. Also, our teachers should not be paying for supplies, and we also need to look at options to provide teachers housing through an affordable housing model. Mahalo.
Thank you very much, Patrick. Micah?
Thank you. So as a teacher for 16 years in the public education system here in Hawaii, and as a union leader in HSTA, I have been fighting for the last several years to increase funding for public education. This is something that we have drastically been underfunding. They did a research a couple years ago when we were trying to do the constitutional amendment to fund education. And it was found that we are underfunding our public education system by nearly $500 million a year. And we have tried multiple times through the legislature to try to fund it. A couple years ago, we tried the constitutional amendment to tax investment properties to fund education. We've tried the transient accommodation tax, hotel tax, and vacation rental tax to fund education. And we've tried a number of other different things to fund education. As I said before, if elected, I will reintroduce the constitutional amendment because I feel that is the least regressive way to fund education and the easiest way to address the problem and produce the amount of income that we need on a yearly basis, as well as not harming the people who live here and make their living in the state. Investment properties, for the most part, are being purchased by corporations to protect their money and interests, and foreign investors, because the real estate market here in Hawaii is so good. And so we need to tax those extras so that we can fund education. And this is the best way that we can do it in order to adequately fund public education and give our keiki the education and the environments and materials that they deserve in order to learn. Mahalo.
Thank you very much, Micah and Patrick. Melody?
Okay. Question number 11 deals with paid family leave and paid sick leave. What are your positions on paid family leave and paid sick leave, given the current state of our economy in the wake of the coronavirus? To you, Micah.
So I'm fortunate being a teacher here in Hawaii that we have a number of sick days, paid sick days that we can take. It's inconceivable to me that the majority of the workers in our state have to choose between staying home sick or to take care of their family or going to work so that they can continue to pay their bills. That's just not a decision that our working class people should have to make. I support a social insurance model where people would pay into the system, kind of like Social Security. It would be a very low amount and they could get a number of sick days and family leave days that they could then take advantage of, and they would not have to make those tough decisions, especially in the COVID era that we're in right now. We don't want people having to decide that they need to go to work so that they can pay their bills. If they're sick, they need to stay home and take care of themselves or take care of their families so that they're not spreading the illness and making someone else sick. So you could get 16 days a year for only $1 a day. Sorry, said that wrong. 16 weeks of sick leave for $1 a year. So that, I think that's a great idea, and that's something that we should take advantage of. Mahalo.
Okay, thank you very much, Micah. Patrick?
Yeah, I was thinking about this actually today. My mother, when she was in community college, she worked at Polyflorist, which was across from Zippy's in Kailua, and she didn't have paid sick leave. And I remember being home as a kid and being sick, and there was no one to take care of me. And I remember sitting in that van actually being sick, and my mother apologizing to me the whole time, saying, "I'm sorry, baby, I apologize," and whatnot. And I remember that. And that's something that really, really stuck out to me, is that we need to make sure our families, our workers are not choosing to, take care of their families, take care of their own health, take care of whatever family needs they have at home. We need to make sure that we take care of our families. So I really, really do believe that we need to promote paid family sick leave for our children. Recently, a 2019 impact study found that 7 out of 10 keiki from married parents actually have no full-time caregiver. And we need to make sure that we're able to provide for that. And this is something I really do believe in. And it actually wouldn't be that expensive. The same report found that family leave insurance in Hawaii would actually cost $58 for someone who's making $48,000 a year, would cost $58 a year, and it would average to about $1.11 a week. And so that's something relatively inexpensive, and that's something we need to promote. This is very, very critical, and it would be very critical right now as we're going through COVID for our families be able to choose to stay home and make sure that they're still getting paid. this is an economic safety net that we need to make sure we have. Mahalo.
Thank you very much, Patrick. Back to you, Flora.
Okay. The next question has to do with Medicare for All. Given the impacts of the pandemic and the imminent need for PPEs, ventilators, increased need to fill the physician shortage of 800, what is your position on Medicare for All and universal health care, and why? So I believe that question goes to Patrick?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Good.
Universal health care and Medicare for All are both nationwide programs. And as a state legislature, I'll be responsible for improving the health of Hawaii's people, regardless of whether or not these bills get passed. Hawaii's Prepaid Healthcare Act has served the state well and should continue to be supported in the absence of federal action to supersede it. We need to make sure that all of our residents have proper medical care. As someone who actually grew up in a family that didn't always have proper medical care, it was very crucial. And there was a local dentist actually here in Kailua. When we didn't have dental care, he actually saw our family and actually didn't charge us, thanks to that. But that shouldn't be the case, right? We need to make sure that all of our residents here in Hawaii have proper medical care and also have proper health care. That's something very important. In that question, also something I want to address is the physician shortage. We have a lack of physicians across the state. We in Hawaii have a great environment. For me personally, I would love to be a doctor in Hawaii, but we need to make sure it's economically feasible. And one of the ways that we do this is through, again, the teacher pipeline program that I had proposed earlier is the same way here. That if you want to be a doctor in Hawaii, we can go to local high schools and tell our students, if you want to be a doctor, we are willing to subsidize your education so that you can stay here in Hawaii, be educated in Hawaii, and then you have a commitment to serve and practice in Hawaii for many years. And that's something I think we need. I can't say enough how important is healthcare, and I do really believe that healthcare is a human right. Mahalo.
Thank you very much, Patrick. Micah, it's your turn.
Thank you. So there is something that we can do in the state, so we're not reliant on the national government to decide on what type of plan we do for our healthcare. In Hawaii, we can fund the Hawaii Health Authority, and we can task them with creating a Medicare for All system. Right now, this legislative session, there's House Bill 1462, which studies have shown that this bill will save us approximately $350 or $350 million a year in healthcare costs. It should be, I know that Medicare for All is sometimes a scary topic for some people, but it's something that we need to seriously take a look at, and it's something that will benefit the state and the residents here greatly. We can do a feasibility study to provide health benefits provide health benefits of the self-insured model, so that our state workers, we can start small with the state workers, and we can see if that works, and then we can expand it out to the rest of the state after that is a success, of course. Thank you.
Yay.
Okay, Melody.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. That was very good. Okay, question number 13 relates to affordable housing and the 460 Kawainui project. How would you address the affordable housing shortage and the controversial 460 Kawainui project? Back to you, Micah.
Thank you. So I'm a huge proponent of truly affordable housing, which is provided for individuals making 60% of the area median income or less, which the Kawainui project does. Unfortunately, I do agree with a lot of the residents that it is too big for the area that it is, where they decided to place it. And there's not enough parking for the residents that are going to live there. I think that the state needs to fund affordable housing and subsidize it so that developers can afford to buy properties here and provide affordable housing for residents at 60% or less of the area median income. This is something that the state needs to work on. They need to provide better funding for it so that developers aren't burdened with this high cost of land, especially in Kailua. It's so expensive to buy land that when something affordable does come along, like the Kauai Nui project, they're forced to build so many units in it so that they can still produce housing for our lowest income individuals that is still at a high quality of living. So by subsidizing these developers more, they could bring that, they'd be able to spend more to buy the properties, and they wouldn't have to produce so many units in the affordable housing projects. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Micah. Patrick, same question.
Sure, absolutely. So the Kauai Nui project came to my attention when I reach out to various community members across Kailua once a month. And one of them said, hey, did you know that this project was happening? This was back in May. So I threw out an informal survey to the community. And the community, within 3 days, I got almost 600 responses. And the community resoundingly said no. But I think it's more nuanced there. Everyone did recognize that there was a need for affordable housing, but the project and the size of the project being proposed did not fit into the character of the community, especially right around the area. I spoke to many of those neighbors. They're actually families that have lived in Kailua since the 30s. And I actually live right across the street. So with the Kauai Nui project, though, I do feel there's an opportunity there. And as a former diplomat, as someone who was a coalition builder, you know, the community has been providing their feedback. They said mahalo to the developer. There was definitely a lot of voices at that neighborhood board meeting that were very upset, but no one recognized the need for affordable housing. And so we as a community need to band together and look for an option. If we're not building that, then where? And I think there's a few opportunities as your state legislator, I would look at buildings across the state, in Kailua that actually need to be refurbished, or as well as looking at state lands in Kailua that could be then turned to develop housing. We need to make sure statewide, though, that we are looking at this type of model, looking at vacant homes, vacant buildings across the state, and using money to see if we can develop that into affordable housing for residents. But the key point is anything that's developed in a community needs to be transparent with the community and needs to be heard by the community, and the community input needs to be taken into account. And that's the issue with the 460 Kauai Nui Street, that the community was not taken into account. And that's why I really do believe it's important to be extremely transparent, especially when it comes to these types of developments. Mahalo.
Thank you very much, Patrick. Flora, back to you.
Okay. The next question, second to the last question, public-private partnerships. What is your position on PPPs in the delivery of public services, such as the rail and private prisons? And I believe this question is to be directed to Micah.
Patrick.
Is that? Oh, Patrick. Sorry.
Yeah.
I've gotten it mixed up. Sorry.
No worries at all. Okay, so as a U.S. diplomat, actually, public-private partnerships was one of the mechanisms we used to actually advance U.S. policy. One of the projects I actually worked on was in Colombia, the Afro-Colombian women as well as indigenous women were actually extremely marginalized. So we actually used this as an opportunity. Hewlett-Packard's headquarters are actually, their southern headquarters are in Medellin. So we actually partnered with Hewlett-Packard to get computers, and then we partnered with Google actually to teach these populations how to sell their products online. So that's a success story for public-private partnerships. I do believe there's a great way to do it, but the public-private partnership that you folks are referring to as the rail has not been as successful here in Hawaii, but it is a valuable opportunity that we can tap into. I feel there's several ways how to improve that. One is having a dedicated office for public-private partnerships that could help third-party oversight of these projects to make sure that there's rigorous fiscal regulations and to make sure that these projects are being properly administered. That's very important, and that's one of the issues that we have with the rail. The second one would be, if we created this office could reduce red tape and bureaucratic hurdles for companies that are wishing to participate in these types of projects. This office could then increase competition by bringing more, so to make sure that when we are entering into public-private partnerships, we're getting the best company that is the best fit for Hawaii. Lastly, we need to just make sure that this is also a great economic opportunity to improve our infrastructure. We have a lot of ailing infrastructure across the state, and we could use these types of models to improve our infrastructure, but we need to make sure that these types of partnerships are beneficial to us and not taking away from taxpayers' dollars.
Thank you, Patrick. Micah.
Hello, I think my camera froze. Those are probably two of the worst public-private partnerships examples that you could give. I know the vast majority of residents here in Hawaii are tired of the rail and hearing about the delays and the increase in taxes that they're being forced to they're being burdened with. For the most part, I don't agree that public-private partnerships are a good thing for the state. The problem is that when private entities get involved in public projects, they're there to make a profit. And when they're trying to make a profit at the expense of the public, that means that they're cutting costs as much as possible so that they can make as much money as possible. Cutting corners, which results in unsafe conditions a lot of the time. Thank you. These are things that we need to be avoiding. And so we should not be venturing into these public-private partnerships unless the private entities are just being philanthropic, and they're trying to just out of the goodness of their heart, they would like to help out. But most of the public-private partnerships are not structured that way. And so I am opposed to most of them.
Okay. Thank you very much. Rich.
Can I ask a question? Are we stuck on, are we all looking at Patrick?
Yeah, we're all looking at Patrick.
For some reason, I can't get the thing off Patrick. I'm sorry about that. Sorry about that, Patrick.
Yeah, Micah, we heard your answer. We just couldn't see you.
When I put spotlight video, it's just, okay, I'm going to do spotlight video back on Patrick. And then I'm going to cancel spotlight video.
Okay. In the meantime, let's have, thank you very much for your response to question 14. Can everybody still hear me? Okay, Melody, I think the last question.
Yes, we are at the last question at this point. Then it looks like we have time.
For chat box.
Yes, we may be able to do that, but let's go ahead with the last question. And it's gonna start with Micah. Hopefully we can get the camera back on him. All right, so this question deals with the public land trust proceeds. Given the shortage in the state budget, what is your position on the 20% public land trust proceeds constitutionally mandated to be distributed to the Office of Hawaiian Affairs? Micah?
Thank you. So total current revenue produced from ceded lands is over $400 million. So that means that they should be receiving over $100 million from these ceded lands. And this is in our state constitution. So this is something that I have trouble understanding why, when they should be receiving over $100 million, they're only currently getting $15 million, which is 4% of their of the 400 million. This is something that needs to be handled by the legislature. they need to do what they're supposed to be doing. There was an agreement made with Oahu where they were initially only going to pay the $15 million, but that was only supposed to be a temporary agreement, and they're continuing to only pay the $15 million years later after that agreement was made, and shorting the Hawaiian people from the hundreds of, over $100 million in funds. So this is something, if elected, that I will work to correct.
Okay, very good, very good. Patrick, you're next.
You unmute myself. This is a very important issue for me as someone who is actually Kanaka and understands the history behind this. This is very important to me, to my family, and to my people. It's a constitutional mandate, actually, that's in our constitution, that 20% of the lands of revenue needs to come to the Office of Hawaiian Affairs. And it's actually codified actually in state, I remember this from school, state statute 10.13.5, if you ever want to look into it, of why 20% needs to come to the Office of Hawaiian Affairs. It's also not only because it's law, it's the pono thing to do. Historically, Native Hawaiians have faced huge hardship and huge economic disparity in their own native lands. We do not recognize that we are a diverse community, but we as an Indigenous people need to be uplifted. And that's something I really hope to do in the state legislature. And this is something that I actually seen in New Zealand, for example. The importance of uplifting the Native population is actually very important in New Zealand. And that's something not only is an onus on us as Native Hawaiians, but is actually an onus it's an onus on Native Hawaiians to help those understand that the importance of Hawaiians in Hawaii. And when Hawaiians succeed, all of Hawaii succeeds. 1/3 of the homeless population in Hawaii is Native Hawaiian. 40% of the population in prisons is Native Hawaiian. These types of money that would actually come into this is not only going to benefit Native Hawaiians, but it's going to benefit the state because it has a direct economic impact. It will help our prison populations. It will help those who are houseless. And that's why we need to make sure that this money is coming to Native Hawaiians and to the Office of Hawaiian Affairs. It's not only beneficial for Native Hawaiians, I cannot reiterate this so much. This money is not only beneficial for Native Hawaiians, it's beneficial for all the state in tackling some of our biggest issues, such as our incarcerated population, as well as our homeless population. Mahalo.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much. All right, so it is 6:47. We do have some time. How about if you look at the questions that have been posed? Because I did see that people have been asking questions in the chat box.
You know what? I'll ask them. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. And then stop me when it's time for you to do your summation. So we have 2 questions so far, and I guess let's take the shorter one first. What is your position? It says here, one of the ways to diversify our economy is through astronomy. What is your position on building TMT on Mauna Kea? Thank you very much. You've gone through Micah and Patrick. You've gone through a grilling, but could you just take a second and answer this one? Patrick.
Sure, absolutely. I've been up to the Mauna, actually. Many of my classmates were up there. I went up to learn. I'm that type of person. Before I take a stance, I do have what's in my na'au, right? I do understand what's in my gut. But I think it's also important to learn and to understand and to have kuka, which is what we call in Hawaiian, like discussion, right? And so it was very powerful for me as a Kanaka to be up there on the Mauna. And one of the things that I've learned was I was so proud of my people. I was so proud to be Native Hawaiian. I'm proud to be Native Hawaiian every day, but to see all of the people that I played basketball with, I played soccer with, to be up there being EMTs, being up there, telling Mo'olelo was amazing. It brought tear to my eyes, and seeing how organized it was. There was a tent for kuka kuka. There was a tent for lomi. There was a tent for discussion. There was a tent actually for those who are LGBTQ. So everyone felt comfortable, and that was amazing. I do believe the Mauna has been mismanaged, and Hawaiians have not had a significant say on one of our most significant religious sites. And I do believe that needs to be recognized. And I think it's a struggle. When I think about it, it's kind of the koho'olave of my generation. And we need to look at that model to see how we can actually work on that. I think before there is any discussion about building another telescope, the state needs to fulfill its promise of removing those 5 telescopes that are no longer in use. The state promised that, and the state has not fulfilled that. Before we even touch about building anything else, that's what needs to be looked at first. And then we also need to look at a way that Native Hawaiians are included in the management of Mauna Kea. Mahalo.
Thank you so much, Patrick. Micah, are you present?
Yes, I am.
Do you have anything to share on
Yes.
that question?
So I am also Hawaiian, and I'm proud of my Hawaiian heritage. I support the protectors up on Mauna Kea, and I'm opposed to them building another telescope up there. As Patrick said, there are 5 already up there, and it has been mismanaged. The telescopes up there have been mismanaged for years. The University of Hawaii should no longer be the manager of the Mauna, and everything needs to be taken down before they start building any more telescopes up there. And no more money for security on Mauna Kea as well. This is a waste of our state taxpayers' money that could be put to much better use. And I also support Native Hawaiians' rights to protest. This is something that is in our Constitution and is being taken away from Native Hawaiians here, both on the Mauna and in places like Kahuku, where the windmills were being put up. People have a right to voice their opinions and to peacefully protest, and the state should not be stepping in and taking away those rights.
Okay, mahalo, both of you. This next question is 2 parts, and it's from resident Scott Weibel. It has to do with funding for all the ideas and relates to what your recommendations might be. The facts that he gives is 80% of the general fund is funded through the general excise tax, that's 50%. And then also it's funded through personal income taxes and also insurance premium taxes and corporate taxes. The question is, the first one, of the general excise tax, the tax on insurance income is only 0.15%. The tax on wholesale activities and the tax on consumers is 0.5%. Would you change this mix? How and why? And in the second part, in terms of income tax rates, personal income is taxed anywhere from 1.4% to 11%. Estates and trusts are taxed at 1.4% to 8.25%, and corporate tax rates are 4.4% to 6.4%. Would you change this mix? How and why? Oh my gosh, that is a huge question.
Yeah.
So in our remaining time, which is 5:53, could you take yeah.
So yeah, I know we're running out of time, so I'll try and keep it short. To fund my 3 main initiatives, which are adequately funding education, affordability for working families here in Hawaii and Kailua, and protecting our environment and natural resources, I have a plan to produce 5 new revenue sources. The first is to increase the high earner income tax. Also, I would close the tax loopholes for our highest earners so that they're actually paying their fair share of the taxes. I would like to increase corporate income tax. That alone would produce $120 million a year. I would like to legalize, regulate, and tax cannabis which would produce another 150 to $200 million a year. And as I mentioned before, I would tax residential investment properties over $1 million. Those 5 things right there would produce over $1 billion in revenue.
Oh, of course. Okay. All right. And thank you, Micah. Patrick?
Yeah, absolutely. So when we look at COVID, on average, the state brings about $675 million a month on tax revenues. The last month, we only brought in 350. COVID is not the time to be raising taxes or to be changing our taxes. If you look at the gap between 675 and 350, it's not a question about increasing taxes. It's actually a question of being able to collect the taxes. We don't have enough economic ability and enough economic action in the economy right now to actually increase. Even if we increase taxes, we wouldn't be able to reap in the same amount because it's a collection of there's not enough economic activity to gain that. So that's an important distinction I wanted to make. Lastly, in Hawaii, as well as our corporate tax, it actually is a flat rate that's lumped in actually for all levels of business. And I think there's one way to look at it that maybe in the future that we looked at larger businesses that have more income, we should be definitely taxing them. But we need to make sure that we are not taxing our small businesses, because right now it's looking at like 1 in 4 small businesses are going to close. We need to make sure that we preserve and save our small businesses. And that's really important to me. And so that's really what I would do as your legislator.
Mahalo, Patrick. Micah, in the chat box, somebody wants to be able to see you. Is your video working?
Apparently it went out when there was that issue and the screen froze, so I'm not able to get it back up.
Okay.
I don't want to log out and redo it, unfortunately. Sorry.
Closing statements, right?
Yes.
Did we have that, Melody?
Yeah. Closing statements, 3 minutes to each candidate. And that will take us to the hour.
Okay, so
thank you afterwards.
So the first person should probably, who started it off at the beginning? Was it Patrick that started? Okay, so then it's Micah's turn to make the closing statement.
So part of my closing statement, I would like to point out that the tax revenues that I'm proposing to fund my 3 initiatives are not on the working class families. They are on the highest income earners and corporations. And those are the ones that are actually profiting at this time during our COVID crisis. So those are the things that we could increase taxes on, and the state would still be okay, and our revenue source would increase. So that being said, as my actual closing statement, I thank you for having me here tonight. I appreciate you folks putting this on for us so that the voters can get to know us and make their decisions on who they're going to vote for. I'm a teacher at Kalaheo High School. I live here in the community. I am a native Hawaiian citizen, and I just want everyone to know that if I am elected, I am going to be the one that is fighting for our community and for our citizens, for our working class families. I'm a union member, and I support workers' rights. And these are the things that I will fight for when I am elected and working in the legislature. I have strong morals and values, and I will not compromise those, but I am willing to work. I have an open mind. I'm willing to work with other individuals with differing opinions. And when presented with factual evidence, I'm more than willing to change my opinion when need be. So thank you everyone for coming out this evening. If you would like to get involved with my campaign, please visit micahpregetzer.com, or you can visit my Facebook and message me on there. I hope everyone has a great evening. Mahalo.
Okay, closing statement from Patrick.
Mahalo to everyone who organized tonight. Mahalo to Micah for joining me on this forum. It was great to hear more about your ideas. Also mahalo to my team who's been working very diligently throughout this election period, and I'm very grateful for all of you. If you would like to learn more about my campaign, you can follow me on Facebook or Instagram at @VoteBroncoHI, or you could learn more about my platform at patrickpihanabronco.com. I believe our community is connected as one. I think that's really what we've been focusing on, is what really my campaign is all about. When I go throughout the community, if I see a child who is struggling in school, that matters to me and makes me think of my little cousin who's at Kailua Elementary. If I see a homeless person on the side of the street in Kailua, that matters to me and that makes me think about my uncle who struggles with drug addiction, who is homeless. That's what really connects us as a community, is the ability to relate to one another and the willingness to help one another. And I think that's very important. And that will be the forefront of if I become elected to represent Kailua and Kaneohe. I really do believe our community has very strong roots. We need to elect someone with strong roots in the community here in Kailua and Kaneohe Bay. And we need to also elect someone that understands the global trends that is coming to Hawaii. With COVID-19, it's so important that we understand ways to solve our critical issues, ways to diversify our economy, and ways that we can help make all of our people prosper here in Hawaii. I believe through my policies that I laid out tonight that I can help the middle class with relief and provide working families with a road to opportunity. I believe through my policies, I can provide hope through the jobless and the houseless and reclaim our young people from violence and despair through the various policies I laid out. Right now is a pivotal time for our state, and we need to make the right choices. We need to make sure that we respond to the challenges we face. We have urgency in our community right now to resolve those issues and to make sure that we're working hard to build a platform that is based in the community and will fight for the community. And I humbly ask your vote on election day. And if you have that same urgency, that same passion as me, I hope you'll join my team and help me to help strengthen Kailua and Kaneohe Bay. Mahalo.
Mahalo to both Patrick and Micah for your time this evening and for speaking to the constituents. Melody, I'm turning this over to you.
Okay, thank you. All right, mahalo again to our candidates for your time, insight, and service and dedication to our community. We wish you both the best of luck and blessings in the coming weeks ahead, and we look forward in working with you soon. Okay, please remember, this is for the rest of you. If you have not already registered to vote, the last day to register is on July 9th. You can register online at hawaii.vote and enroll in the Democratic Party at hawaiidemocrats.org. Mail-in ballots will be mailed on July 17th through the 21st. August 8th is the primary election, so make sure that you get your mail back. You mail back your ballots early. Mahalo again for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you again at our next Candidates Forum, which at this time will be on Wednesday, June 17th at 5:30 to 7:30 with Council District 3 candidates. And those three are Kalani Kalima, Esther Kia'aina, and Alan Texera. Then on the following night, Thursday, June 18th, 5:30 to 7:30, we'll have District 51 candidates, Alan Akau, Kobe Chalk, Scott Grimmer, and Lisa Martin. Again, mahalo very much for taking the time and being with us and learning about our candidates. And we wish you all well in health, spirit, and love. Mahalo.
Thank you for joining us, and a big mahalo to Rich Howerson for handling the technical aspects of this candidate forum. Good luck to Patrick. Good luck to Micah. Mahalo nui loa.
Mahalo, thank you.
Mahalo. Have a good evening. Good health, everyone.